Mount Rushmore, man.
No, why does it always got to be always past us? It's got to like call the dude out.
What other reason could there be? Hey, everybody, welcome back. We were just talking. John Elway has apparently called out Tom Brady for using supplements. I personally think when you're worth like $400 million, you shouldn't be drinking any more petty juice. You should move up to Fiji water after that. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But when we left off, we were talking a lot of high school football. We've got our guy Aaron Daniel here from Jocks Preps to kind of guide us through all these teams. We're really excited. The season is just a few days away. Some high school games have already happened across the nation. But we were talking about Hoover and the Birmingham area in general last year. The metro area finally got their first title in a while.
City
and
schools.
This year you got Thompson.
Of the city schools, Ramsay brought a title, and I really hope there's a movie made about their story and their experience.
Very impressive.
I mean, it's incredible.
They don't have their own locker room.
They don't have a locker room. They just now have a weight room they share with other sports teams, and they bust 20 minutes to practice every day. They don't have a practice field.
Yeah, because they have to do a practice at
and so they buy
field.
Yeah,
and by virtue of that, I suppose they have less practice time.
Yes.
Than other schools.
I mean,
so they have to shove everything in.
Like what Ramsay did last year is just one of the most amazing things I've seen. I mean, it's.
We saw their program. We saw their program on the rise, and we thought this team could be great, but we didn't think they'd be that great. We didn't think state championship partly because of the issues they have financially and the fact that they have to bus over to a practice field, as you said, 15, 20 minutes away over in the Irondale area. It's not easy. They're trying now to get some alumni to help them fix up a little grass area next to the school to become a practice field, which would be nice for them. No locker room. They always had to put their, I think they had to take home their gear. Their gear each night, wash it off, bring it back the next day, and put it in their school locker. It's the very definition of blue collar, take your pail to work mentality that Ramsay brought, and it was perfect. And we watched them in Auburn last year, and I thought Opelika might run them out of the stadium. Going into it because Opelika was hungry for a championship, had lost previously to Hoover in the state title game, and is in Auburn. They brought a crowd to Jordan-Hare Stadium.
It was full.
It was that half, the Opelika half, the lower bowl, don't think there was a seat empty. It was pretty crazy. Mm-hmm. But Ramsay, led by Benico Harley at quarterback, who showed off his skill that I think maybe Opelika kids underestimated a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the athletic ability of them.
He carved them up like a Thanksgiving turkey in that first half, and that led them to that win. And, of course, that famous fake punt call in the second half that Ruben Nelson had no clue about and said, I never would have let him do it if I had known, but thank goodness I didn't. And it leads to a state championship. And 43 years since the previous championship when Banks High School, who no longer exists down in Birmingham, was the state champion in the 70s. So it was a remarkable story. As much as I love the story, I don't see them repeating because Benico has moved on. I think he's now at Alabama A&M. Good luck to him. I hope he stays. I hope we get to see him in the Magic City Classic in 4 years as a quarterback. That'd be really nice.
Absolutely.
But look, Ramsay is going to have a tough enough time in their own region with Jackson-Olin. They did lose T.D. Moultrie to go into Auburn, but Connis Miller is a big-time recruit at defensive end. He'll anchor that defense. They bring back some pretty decent guys. Alfonso Holmes at middle linebacker, Avon Mitchell at wide receiver, Alvin Toney also at wide receiver. I'm not sold, though, that Coach Vakakis is extremely confident in the team he has this year compared to last year. And it was bad enough that they got basically embarrassed on their own field in their first playoff game in 19 years against Pinson Valley. And Pinson has vastly improved, by the way, and we'll talk about them in a little while. But the team I expect the most to have a shot to get to a state championship this year is a team that was actually in the state finals last year, Wenonah. And they lost talent like most good teams do. They lost senior talent. But here's what Wenonah does bring back: a quarterback in Carlos Rogers. And Carlos is a really good quarterback. He's a solid quarterback. He's a senior. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. He's got the build for him, and he is a solid leader for that offense. And I think they can utilize him to get things done. I know they lost Giovanni Williams and some great defensive players, but he got Rodgers back. He's got Xavier Stewart back at wide receiver. You got Ryan Richardson on that defensive line. You've got some pretty solid players at Wenonah to help them get through 5A North and get back to a state championship game. And mainly it's because Briarwood lost quarterback William Gray. Otherwise, I'd probably be sold on Briarwood getting to a state championship game. But nevertheless, I think Wenonah gets back to a state title game. Whether they win it or not is an entirely different matter, especially if they have to go up against Beauregard again. Whew. Because Mr. Football
Beauregard
is back on the field.
That's how we call it.
Yeah. Ladarius Webb rushed for over 3,000 yards last year. And you have to understand, they play 15 games in a season. He averaged over 200 yards a game on the ground, which is, it's insane. And it was an easy choice for Mr. Football. And we haven't had a whole lot of returning Mr. Footballs in recent memory. So this is going to be a really good story to keep an eye on with Beauregard. Can they make a perfect run this year? They didn't even win their own region last year. They lost to Central Clay County during the regular season. So can they win a region title and then get back to the state championship, this time in Tuscaloosa, and have Webb just knife through everybody? And Wenonah had such a good defense last year. We thought Wenonah will at least make this interesting. Low-scoring game. Webb had none of that. Webb just decided he was going to take that game and make it his own. I think he rushed for over 350 yards by the time it was over.
It was a state record.
It was disgusting. It was a great performance.
Yeah, it was unbelievable to watch that performance. I was watching from the booth. I mean, what an absolute monster. I have to ask you if we can go back to 6A Region 5,
sure,
with teams like Parker and Hueytown, Ramsay. I stay in Homewood. And a lot of fans in Homewood want to know what the heck is going on with their Patriots, because this was a very proud program, 5A state champs multiple years. Since 6A, since their move up to 6A, hasn't been been a bit rocky. What do you see from them this year?
This is the time I wish John Lunsford was here, because he can give you. He's a Homewood grad and was part of 2 state championships, and he'll tell you about it. He will not hold back when he tells you his grievances for his alma mater, because it has been, as you said, it's been a bit of an embarrassment for them. They were 5-6 last year, lost in the first round of the playoffs. They have not had that consistency that they used to have in 5A since they've been in 6A. But I think a lot of it comes from the coaching. And Ben Bergeson, God love him, has not been as good as some of the previous coaches in Homewood's history. They've seen better days. They have good talent. Homewood has always had good talent come through there. Right. We saw a college recruit a couple of years ago, if I remember. I remember when Clay had to face Homewood in a playoff game. They had a college recruit on either their offensive or defensive line. So Homewood does not lack talent. Homewood, for some reason, just lacks the ability to go on the field night after night and deliver.
No, I think depth's the biggest issue when you move up to 6A from 5A. I mean, 5A, I think they were right at the right side. You know, depth-wise, it wouldn't show as much. Moving up to 6A, that you really start to see that depth as an issue from dominant teams and teams that just can't get over the hump.
Not to mention you had an NFL talented Amir Abdullah, which
very difficult to replace that. You've had some young guys over at Homewood starting on that defense. I mean, they had a freshman at corner for I think he's a junior that's coming up here. So they're young.
They're young, but the issue has been quarterback. They can't get a read on it in the past. Last year they were working 2 quarterbacks at the beginning of the season. One of them was Hatcher's kid, Chris Hatcher over at Sanford, and they had Scott Pageant's kid over at wide receiver. So people thinking maybe there was a little bit of political play going on at Homewood. Not really a shocker. You see that at a lot of high schools, but it didn't do them any favors. Look back at last year. 20-3 lost to Vestavia. Didn't make the playoffs. Lost 25-7 to Helena. Lost 40-14 to Ramsay at Legion Field. And they played well early on, but then Benico and company just rolled over them in the second half. And then a 15-10 loss to Hueytown. If they had won that game, as sad as this is to say, a 6-4 Homewood team would have been second in the region. Instead, the loss put them at 4th. And it's been that bad. I mean, and then they lose 42-21 to Minor in the playoffs. Yeah. Minor was a good team, don't get me wrong, but I mean, that was a team Homewood beat constantly in region play.
I was about to say, that's not good enough for the Patriots.
Even when they weren't good. They were still not good like 2 or 3 years ago, and they were beating Minor on the field, and then they get run off this past year. Homewood is a weird case, honestly. It's just I think it's a coaching thing. Since Bergeson's been there, 9-3, 9-3, 5-6. Well, his 9-3 wasn't any different than Doug Goodwin's last year. So he kept it steady for 2 years and then took a drop. So the question is it an aberration? Can they actually bounce back this year? If they don't get more than 8 wins this year, playoffs included, I think Bergeson's on a hot seat at that point. I don't think there's any way around it. Yeah. They need to look for a coach that's going to get them back to the days of Bob Newton, where they were constantly in the hunt for championships.
Well, I don't know if you'll see that, because I think one thing is Homewood's not a city school, they're Jefferson County school, right?
It is.
They don't have the money, and now they don't compete with Mountain Brook and Hoover and all these other schools. They're all city schools. They have all this ridiculous amount of money and funds. So all these talent in the area is getting drawn to those city schools. So Homewood doesn't have the pool that they're even the competition they're playing.
Well,
Homewood doesn't have the same.
No, I say that. No, I thought Homewood. No, I take that back. I thought Homewood was its own school system. Is it Jeff Co-Ed?
They're Jeff Co.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I think you maybe starting to see some of that as a reason you start seeing them is even though Minor's also a Jeff Co. Minor's not competing to keep their talent in house with other city schools in the area.
I have it right here. They are their own city school.
Are they?
Yeah, they are their own. They have no excuse.
Yeah,
this is not a county.
I really thought I had a great argument.
Honestly, there's a lot of money. There's a lot of
it.
money around the Homewood area, man. Don't let people fool you. There's some affluence.
That would have been a great argument.
It's not that I don't trust you.
It certainly would have.
It's not that I don't trust you, Hunter. It's not that I don't trust you. I just have to fact check, and thankfully I did. They have no excuse. They've got the city school system. They've got the money.
Yeah.
They just aren't going out and getting a good coach, and Bergeson is not that answer here. It's proven itself when you go 9-3, 9-3, which means you lost 2 years in a row in the second round to start, and then you barely make the playoffs and lose in the first round. It's not good.
Maybe I need to get John on the program and then get our John. That usually comes over to the apartment. They were both. Was Lunsford an offensive lineman?
He was an offensive lineman.
Okay, so him and our friend John was an offensive lineman at Homewood. We need to have a coming together of this.
You're going to have two guys who just are boiling over about the Because I'll tell you, he takes a lot of pride, and as I do in Clay Chalkville. He takes a lot of pride in Homewood, and he's seen them at their very best. And to have to see them at what is probably their very worst right now is embarrassing for anybody.
It is tough. It is tough, but we're going to cut the break.
Yeah.
While we're in break, we'll see if Aaron Daniels can fire any more high school coaches before the season starts.
I've got a list. We've already got a.
So we got Prattville and Homewood right now.
Get ready, everybody.
We've had over 100 changes over the offseason. It's been a firestorm over the offseason.
When we come back, let's touch on maybe the smaller teams around in Birmingham area. Let's look at Calera, Montevallo, Shelby County. Some of those.
Sounds good.
And everybody stick around. We will be talking to Arky Shea from UMP Sports up in the Huntsville area as we get into some of our college preview as well. So stick around for all that on the sidelines in just a moment.